Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we are going to study about what is bias variance trade-off. To get more information about what is bias and what is variance, if you don't have any basic idea about what is bias and variance, you can go check out our previous videos on what is bias and what is variance with the notes linked in the description box. So now we will start with what is bias variance trade-off. So while building the machine learning model, it is important to uh, take in the consideration of the bias and the variance to avoid the overfitting and underfitting problems. So as we have seen that bias is nothing but the errors that is the difference between the predicted and the actual outcome, and variance is it is the amount of variations when we use different training data sets to train our model. So overfitting and underfitting are the terminologies that we'll see in the next lecture, but now I will give you some basic idea about it. So overfitting occurs when the model has high variance and low bias. So in that case the model is overfitted. Underfitting is the situation in which the model has high bias and low variance. So that is the situation in which the model is underfitted. So in deep we will understand in the next videos. So when we build the learning model, we need to always take into the consideration about the bias and variance errors in order to avoid the overfitting and underfitting problems. So if the model is simple and has few parameters, then it may have high bias and low variance, as I have discussed in the previous videos. So the model that has high bias is always a simple model, and it will always it is not much complex also. So if the model has large number of parameters, then it may have low bias and high variance. So the model that has high variance will always have large number of parameters because it tries to cover all the data points from the data sets, and it is more complex model as compared to the bias model, the model which has high bias. So if it is required to have a balance between bias error and the variance errors, which is known as the bias variance trade off. So to balance between the both of these errors, we need to find out some of the spot that will balance both of this error, and this spot is called as the bias variance trade off. So for the model to predict accurately, the algorithm needs a low variance and low bias. So if the model has low variance and low bias, it will not face the problems like overfitting and underfitting. This will allow the model to predict the output more accurately, but the problem is that it is not possible as variance and bias are related to each other. So if we decrease the variance, it will increase the bias, and vice versa. If we will decrease the bias, then it will increase the variance. So ideally we need to find a model that accurately captures the regularities in the training data and simultaneously generalize well with the unseen data. So as we have seen that the model with high variance always learns very precisely, or it performs well with the training data set, but it does not perform well with the unseen data set, or we can say the testing data set. So we need to find a model that will perform, or that will captures the regularities in the training data sets, and simultaneously, means in parallelly, it will generalize well with the unseen data as well, so that the model will not have the high variance. So but it is not possible simultaneously, because high variance algorithms may perform well with the training data, which leads to the overfitting to the noisy data. As I told, the model that has high variance, it will perform well with the training data, but it does not perform well with the testing data, which causes the problem of overfitting. Whereas the high bias algorithm generates simple model that may not capture important regularities in the data set. So the model that has high bias is always a simple model. It is not much complex as well. So it fails to capture the important regularities in the data set. So we need to find a sweet spot between the bias and the variance to make an optimal model. So hence bias variance trade-off is about finding the sweet spot to make the balance between the bias and the variance. So variance errors. So this was all about bias variance trade-off. So in the next video we will understand what is overfitting and underfitting. So if you want the notes related to this topic, the link is in the description box. Thank you.